Good evening. Thank you for joining us for yet another virtual this evening. And the theme really is the PNM's war on democracy, and in particular, Rowley's PNM and their war on our democracy. I would like to thank all our speakers tonight, very powerful presentations in their contributions touching and concerning matters of national importance. The opposition will continue to do our duty and hold government to account. We will continue to defend the Constitution and all the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Now, we've seen for the past 2 years, we have been dealing with a global pandemic. But in fact, for the past 6 years, we have been struggling with a virus that is much worse than the COVID. And that is the dictatorship being spread by the Prime Minister and his corrupt government. Today, we have been plunged into a constitutional abyss by an unholy alliance of three of the most powerful offices in our land. Office of the Attorney General, Office of the Prime Minister, and the Office of the President. Like a virus, this matter has even gone so far to infect the Police Service Commission and indeed the TTPS, the Police Service. These high office holders have very serious questions to answer. And on Saturday, I listened to the Prime Minister insult and degrade MPs, voters calling them imps, chimps, and pimps, and so it was disgraceful and deplorable. But that is not surprising. You see, Mr. Rowley is lashing out because he has been caught red-handed. Try as he might, he cannot lie and rant and rave and bully his way out of this time and this mess that he has created. I turn out another very important matter, and I return to those three office holders and others. I think we must mark the front page of The Guardian today with the COVID deaths reaching 1,600. That's 1,600 of our citizens dying from this COVID. We had 1,350 deaths since the middle of May. So from May to now, 1,350 deaths. On July 1, when there were 850 deaths, 600 deaths between May 19 and June 30, I called for changes to the failed propaganda team of the Singh and Parasram and the others. A failed team because look at where we are today. At the time, commentators and the media, in an attempt to attack the UNC, condemned my call for changes. Where are these commentators now? Come out and say something to the families of all these persons who have since died. 1,350 deaths in 159 days. This is a combined number of murders for the last 3 years, and yet we have no accountability. You see, in this country, anyone who goes against the popular opinion of the day is condemned and cancelled. Because you want to cancel conversation and opinion, we have now reached, as I said, 1,600 deaths, and that was reported this morning. I pray God none other has occurred within the last several hours. I again call for changes to be made to the Ministry of Health propaganda team. The Singh is a failure, Parasram is a failure, Abdul Richards is a failure, Hines is a failure. There must be a commission of inquiry into all these deaths, as well as from the overall management of the COVID. I had called for that before, and I called for it again. In the United Kingdom, we have precedent. There was a call for their Prime Minister to have a commission of inquiry, and they have filed a report. They have filed a report in their Parliament about their management of COVID. I call for our country here, in our country, for an inquiry into the management of COVID and into the very many deaths that we've had. I turn now to speak on some very serious matters touching and concerning the Office of the Attorney General. This Attorney General continues to trample on the Constitution. This is because he just does not understand the fundamental and sacred principles upon which our Constitution is founded. The principle of the separation of powers is central to the structure of our Constitution. Section 90 of that Constitution establishes the office of the DPP. It is an independent office which provides critical functions as a crucial stakeholder in our criminal justice system. One of the essential functions of the DPP is to provide advice and guidance to the police service when it concerns very serious criminal matters. The Sunday Express, 17th October, published an article entitled DPP Decides on Chandler this week. It reports, amongst other things, and I quote, "The Office of the AG has provided a legal opinion stating that the attorney Christian Chandler was not in breach of COVID-19 regulations on the day he was detained by Coast Guard officers." The story continues. The advice was given by the Office of the AG to Griffith 1 week after Chandler and 13 others were detained by officers of the Coast Guard. Serious questions must now be asked about the conduct of the AG in relation to this matter. Mr. Chandler is no ordinary citizen. He is the head of the TTPS legal department, and the allegations made against him are very, very serious. So I ask you, how on earth could the AG be advising the police in such a sensitive matter? How could he be doing that? Who made the request to the AG for legal advice? When was the request made and why was it made? Why did the AG not advise the police that he is not a competent authority to render such advice to the police on an ongoing criminal investigation of this magnitude? Why did he not direct them to the Office of the DPP with an explanation, obviously, that the Office of the DP is the only competent authority to give such advice? No matter how many law exams you fail, certainly as an AG, you should have appreciated that you were acting unlawfully by trespassing on the Office of the DPP, the independent Office of the DPP. Why did the AG not request an explanation from the police service as to why they were bypassing the Office of the DPP and coming to him, the AG, instead? Why? When they sought advice on such a sensitive investigation. Again, who made this request to the AG for this legal advice and why? The AG has breached the separation of powers doctrine by illegally usurping the role and function of the DPP. And this reckless and careless action is a most dangerous precedent. I want to remind you, this is not the first time that the AG has done this. He seems to be a serial offender in this regard, serial offender. He acts as if he is the DPP's boss and the DPP is his subordinate when nothing could be further from the truth. The DPP is not subject to his influence, direction, or control in any form or fashion. Everyone remembers how Farris was parading himself all over the media, warning John public about the petty fines they would face if they didn't wear masks and did not obey the COVID regulations. But all of a sudden, he's advising that Chandler did nothing wrong. This is the latest in a series of transgressions of this type. The AG, as I said before, is a serial offender in this regard. Recently, it emerged that the AG had secretly negotiated a sweetheart deal with Mr. Vincent Nelson QC, whereby he contractually agreed with Nelson for the following things: that he, that is the AG, will not disclose, thereby hide the statement from the public and the Parliament; that he will not disclose, thereby hide the statement, that contractual document, from any police authorities, prosecuting bodies, tax enforcement agencies, regulatory and disciplinary bodies in foreign jurisdictions. He said that no civil court proceedings will be brought against Mr. Nelson for any matters in which he previously represented the government. Further, that agreement has that he, the AG, will recommend to the DPP that no criminal proceedings be brought against Mr. Nelson in relation to his witness statement. He also agreed in that document that if any person brings a court action against Mr. Nelson for any matters arising out of the indemnification or defamation law suits in relation to the witness statement, government will fully indemnify Mr. Nelson for any damages awarded and legal costs. This is madness on the part of an Attorney General of any country. You know, AG enjoys making very derogatory statements with references to MP for Sama Barataria, Saddam Hussein. I don't know if he has a special likeness for Saddam, young Saddam, he calls him young Saddam. I want to tell the AG, the country will prefer someone who is young and knows the law than someone who may be older and does not know the law. Plea bargaining is the sole preserve of the office of the DPP. The DPP has already publicly stated that he knew nothing about the AG's version of Nelson's plea bargaining. And here once again, the AG was playing DPP and police in this manner and in this regard. He wants to operate as judge, a jury, witness, and executioner without any respect for the independent institutions. The frightening consequences of this revelation, that the AG has been advising the police on sensitive criminal investigations, must not ever be underestimated. I'll tell you why. How many other criminal investigations have Arawi or the AG interfered in by playing DPP, by providing legal advice to the police service? Today I ask this question. What other police investigations has the AG advised the police service on without the knowledge of the DPP? In preparing legal opinions, did the AG consult the DPP? Was he also advising on the Camille Robinson Regis matter where she deposited $143,000 in an FCB account without declaring the source of funds? Is he advising on the most recent matter involving MP Foster Cummins? Did he advise on the Darrell Smith investigation? So which other investigations that are criminal investigations has the AG interfered in by giving legal advice? And of course, whenever his behavior is called into question, he waves his famous sub judice rule flag. I tell you, we should rename him the sub judice AG. He is quick to talk about anything and everything except when he is breaching the Constitution. That's when he comes up with the mantra, the chant, sub judice, sub judice. I wish to announce that I intend to write to the Honourable DPP to ask as follows. If he had given his consent for Faris to advise the police service on this matter, the Chandler matter, whether his office was consulted in the preparation of the legal opinion from the AG's office, which said Christian Chandler and his crew were not in breach of the law when they were detained by the Coast Guard. Did that happen without consultation or information to the DPP? I would also be calling for an investigation to determine whether the AG is guilty of misconduct in public office and unlawful interference with an ongoing criminal investigation. The Prime Minister's recent speech really reinforces to me the need for grave concern. The Prime Minister claimed the UNC was attacking the AG. Why? Because the AG was going after those involved in white-collar crime. This is an admission from the Prime Minister that the AG is interfering with the independent office of the DPP and their roles and functions, as well as breaching the separation of powers. It appears the Prime Minister himself does not understand the separation of powers that holds our nation together. I make it abundantly clear, the AG has no power to go after anyone for the commission of criminal offences. That is the sole preserve of the DPP and the TTPS. The PM is trying to defend Arawi by saying that he's investigating white-collar crime. He is the Attorney General Police Officer. What authority does he have to investigate crime? Is he using and abusing his office and his role as the central authority to go on a political witch hunt? These are serious questions which arise. He is usurping the function of the office of the DPP and the TTPS legal unit by giving these legal opinions on criminal charges. Why is the office of the AG sending opinions to the TTPS about whether a contract worker and legal advisor has breached the public health regulations? This is yet another example of the complete lack of respect for independent institutions. The PNM are hell-bent on becoming a dictatorship, and so they have their hands involved in everything. They have interfered with the work of the Police Service Commission. They have interfered with the selection of a Commissioner of Police. They have interfered with parliamentary oversight with respect to the merit list. They are now interfering very dangerously with police investigation. This is a dangerous trend towards creating a private army, which we were warned about in the Endell Thomas case. And we refuse to stand idly by while the AG manipulates and tramples on our Constitution with impunity because he is protected by his Prime Minister. No one is above the law, and we are all equal in the eyes of the law. The AG must be called to account for his actions. Whilst the police are investigating the matter of his transfer of the Porsche, the luxury vehicle, it must now also investigate the AG's role in the Chandler investigation and the Vincent Nelson scandal. And by the way, what has happened to the investigation into the gun-toting children? Where has that gone? It's gone away. So I say the AG is turning out to be a serial offender in terms of trampling the Constitution and usurping the functions of the DPP. So now this brings me back to dictator Prime Minister. I said earlier, Prime Minister, you get catch, and there you are ranting and raving. Yesterday I asked some questions about the now famous letter that the Prime Minister wrote to the Police Service Commission about Commissioner of Police Gary Griffith. The Prime Minister claimed that 1 year ago he wrote to the Commission telling them that he had lost confidence in Commissioner of Police Gary Griffith. This is a very significant revelation. It gives a motive for the subsequent interference in the Police Service Commission and the constitutional duties of the Office of the President. Despite the Prime Minister's loss of confidence letter, the Commission proceeded to generate a merit list which apparently included the same Gary Griffith and even went thereafter to appoint Griffith to act temporarily. It seems apparent then that the Prime Minister went above their heads to sabotage the process of appointment. The President, Prime Minister, and AG have even more serious questions to answer right now as a result of the Prime Minister's hot-headed press conference. 1. When specifically did the Prime Minister advise the Commission that he, Prime Minister, had lost faith in the Commissioner of Police? What caused the loss of faith? Did he write only to the chairman or did he write all members of the Commission? Did the AG know of this letter or was he kept in the dark by the Prime Minister? Did the Cabinet agree to undermine the process or was this entirely the Prime Minister's action? What other action against the Commissioner of Police was undertaken? How many other interferences has the Prime Minister have made over the last year after sending this loss of confidence letter? Was confidential information about the Service Commission being shared between the Office of the President and that of the Prime Minister? Was there collusion by the President, Prime Minister, and Police Service Commission Chairman to derail the merit list from being sent to Parliament, or was it just a coincidence that it all happened to be at President's house on the 12th of August 2021? Or is it the 11th of August? So I'll come back to those dates because, like the budget, the maths just not matching. Maths not matching. When asked by a reporter whether he denies meeting with the President, the Prime Minister defiantly retorted that he does not deny it, and furthermore, that he can meet with the President 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, adding he doesn't have to tell anybody what they would have spoken about. This confirms that the Prime Minister sees himself as a supreme leader, as a dictator. He wrongly believes that he's empowered by the Constitution to do whatever he wants without having to account to anybody. I turn now to the Office of the President. It is respectful to the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago and to the very Constitution that Her Excellency swore to uphold that after weeks of silence, Her Excellency chose to issue a paid full-page advertisement in the newspapers rather than facing the media to answer questions. Indeed, Her Excellency could have had a broadcast to the nation since serious issues were being raised in a constitutional crisis that we are in. In a constitutional crisis of such grave importance, it is shocking that the President could not be bothered to address the citizens in person. Yet we know that the President is capable of speaking with the media, as she did once when she hastily convened a media conference, on a trivial matter regarding a trip she had made to New York. If the paid advertisement was done to avoid Her Excellency having to face the music by having to field questions from the media, such a strategy can only serve to bring her office into further disrepute. You are also accountable to the people, madam. It is further concerning that the President only decided to break her silence after the Prime Minister's rant on Saturday, as if to ensure that her message would not clash with his, and that the PM's message was to take precedence over the President's. To make matters worse, The President's paid advertisement has only further complicated the matter, creating more questions than answers which our country desperately need. And these include: 1. Why did the President wait until October 17 to inform the country for the first time that an order of merit list was submitted to Her Excellency on 11th August, but then withdrawn? Why? Why did you wait so long? Why did the President allow the Republic to descend into chaos between then and now without providing this key bit of factual information to the citizens whom she serves? Why does the President refuse to let the citizens know whether the Prime Minister met with her on August 11th or August 12th to discuss his concerns about the order of merit list? If everything is above board, why is the President running from disclosing the public officials who met at President's house, especially in the light of the public interest? So something is very strange because the maths just not mathsing. Let me share some documentary evidence with you. By letter dated 7th day of September 2021, Her Excellency, through Nancy Arnault, Director of Legal Services at the Office of the President, responded to one Anand Ramrogan, Senior Counsel, as the Attorney at Law for Ravi Balgobin Maharaj. And in that letter, I quote from that said letter, the words contained there: I can confirm that Her Excellency the President, on August 12th, and I ask you to note that, on August 12th, 2021, received a letter of even date from the Chairman of the Police Service Commission, Ms. Bliss C. Prasad. Ms. C. Prasad thereby submitted in compliance with Legal Notice 183 of 2021 a list of suitably qualified persons as nominees to act in the office of Commissioner of Police. Continuing the quotation, by letter of August 13th, 2021, Her Excellency replied to the Chairman, no notification was sent to Parliament by Her Excellency for the granting of an acting appointment in the Office of Commissioner of Police, as no such procedure is mandated or provided for in law. I end my quotation there. And then I want to share with you something else, again, that shows that maths is just not mathsing. We have in the public domain two affidavits, both sworn on the same date, both sworn on the 27th September 2021. One is the affidavit of Corey Harrison, who is the Acting Director of Personnel Administration, and this affidavit was filed in the matter with Ravi Balgobin Maharaj. Then we have another affidavit sworn on the same 27th September by the Acting Deputy Director of Personnel Administration, Helen Warner. Two affidavits. This one was sworn in a matter relating to Mr. Anand Ramesa against the Police Service Commission. Both these are conflicting statements, so the question we ask is which is true. So let's take Ms. Harrison's affidavit first, and I quote from paragraph 8 of that affidavit. A list of nominees was submitted to Her Excellency on the 12th August. There was delay by the Commission in carrying out its exercise given the date of issuance of the 2021 order. It was done in less than 2 months. That is Mr. Harrison. I quote now from the affidavit of Ms. Warner from paragraphs 39 and 40 of this affidavit of Ms. Warner. I quote, the Police Service Commission has withheld submission of the merit list to the President after attempting to do so because of certain security concerns that came to his attention. As the Police Service Commission is not itself conducting the investigation, not being equipped to do so, to compile the security reports, the Police Service Commission cannot say exactly when the reports will be available for it to finalize its merit list. However, the Police Service Commission has a duty to have the security investigation done before finalizing the merit list. Paragraph 40 from Ms. Warner, I quote, the Police Service Commission will finalize its merit list when the security report is available, because not only is it duty-bound to act with alacrity, but it is not in the public interest nor good for the morale of the police service that there is not is substantive holder of the Office of Police Commissioner. So first we have the letter sent to Mr. Ramlogan, then we had these affidavits sworn on the 27th of September, and now we come to the letter to Anand Ramlogan, in which the President confirmed that on August 12th, the office received a letter of even date from Ms. Sipasad. Then we had the two affidavits sworn on the 27th of September. And now we come to the published statement of Her Excellency, which was published in the newspapers over the weekend. In that published statement, Her Excellency said that the order of merit list was delivered to her on August 11, 2021. So who is lying and why? Which one is true? The conflict in all these statements raised more questions than answers. The President made no mention about the significant withdrawal of the merit list in her response to Mr. Ramlogan, in circumstances where she knew that her letter was going to be used as critical evidence in a court of law. How many merit lists did she receive? Is it that one time on August 11th and another on August 12th? In saying that she had replied to Bliss Prasad simply to indicate that no notification was sent to the Parliament because this was not required by law, and by the way, we now know that is not true based on the court ruling, why did the President not come clean and simply say, I no longer have any list to issue any notifications to the Parliament because you withdrew the merit list you gave me? Why was such critical information being deliberately withheld from the court? Or is it that Her Excellency informed her lawyer, and by the way, her lawyer was Faris Al-Rawi, Attorney General? Is it that she would have informed her lawyer, who was represented her in the court, but that the AG failed to inform the court about this critical piece of information? As a former judge, the President would know that she had a duty to make full, frank disclosure to the court. This was a serious and deliberate omission on her part that was plainly relevant to the case. This was a material non-disclosure on her part of epic proportions. It is scandalous and disingenuous, to say the least. To compound matters, Her Excellency would have us believe that she remained silent when the merit list was given to her and was withdrawn, that she didn't ask any questions about why it was being withdrawn and on whose authority, that she didn't seek to protect the Constitution by demanding answers because the Commission had completed the process and the Parliament and the public interest would have been prejudiced. Are we really expected to believe this Nancy story? Did the Prime Minister intervene after this merit list was provided to Her Excellency? If the President had concerns about Legal Notice 183, what did she do about it? How is it that the President, a former judge, so misinterpreted Legal Notice 183, paragraph 4, that she did not believe that the President had been given the power to send a notification forward to Parliament by that law? Who in the Police Service Commission and the Office of Chief Parliamentary Counsel gave the President this incorrect legal advice? Was the President privy to the report in relation to the matter in the public domain about firearm users' license that has been playing out recently in the media? Was it the President's business to bring those matters to the attention of the Police Service Commission? It is clear that the President is hiding her missteps behind technical English and literary services. However, these have cast further shadows upon Her Excellency's office. This is not a time to impress the country with her use of Queen's English. This is a time for transparency and accountability. The opposition now even more strongly maintains that Her Excellency has brought the office of the President into disrepute. I once again remind Her Excellency that no one is above the law. The opposition will continue to hold the President accountable for her role in the crisis we now face. It is in the public interest that the opposition has set in motion the process to investigate the President's actions. And based on the President's statement on Sunday, raising more questions than answers, it bolsters the need for an investigation into this entire scandalous matter. The motion which I have filed in the Parliament to establish a tribunal to investigate the removal of Her Excellency as President of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago is required more than ever to determine the facts of the events that led to this constitutional abyss. It is my hope that the nation can embark upon this exercise designed to protect citizens, to protect the law, to uncover the truth, and to hold those in responsibility to account. In that regard, I have today written to Her Excellency the President on some of the matters that cause grave concern. This is a copy of the letter. And I'll just quote some parts of it for you, and we'll put the rest of it on site online. I write with grave concern regarding the recent notifications and consultation letters sent by your good self concerning nominees to serve on the Police Service Commission. It is my respectful view that the office of the President has lost all moral and ethical grounds to continue to participate in this nomination process, given the recent ruling of our High Court indicating that Your Excellency acted in contravention of the Constitution when you did not submit the Police Service Commission merit list to Parliament. I am fortified in my view by the recent statements made by Your Excellency in the paid advertisement appearing in the newspaper 17 October 2021. In that advertisement, Your Excellency shockingly revealed that the Police Service Commission merit list for Commissioner of Police was sent to you but was then withdrawn. At no time over the past month did Your Excellency disclose that the Police Service Commission merit list had been withdrawn. Furthermore, Your Excellency appears to acknowledge the fact that a public official was responsible for interfering with this process at President's House. I respectfully remind Your Excellency that no one in Trinidad and Tobago is above the law of our land. We must all respect the law. I call again for Your Excellency to disclose the identity of this public official and state categorically whether it was indeed the Prime Minister, Dr. Keith Rowley, or not. My respectful view is that it is in the national interest of Trinidad and Tobago for the Office of the President to adequately answer the many serious questions that are still outstanding. The process of appointing a new Police Service Commission must be paused until this happens. Otherwise, all appointments made in future will appear to carry the taint of political partisanship. The opposition refuses to participate in a potentially tainted process of nominations to the PSC until these very critical questions are answered. It has just been brought to my attention that at 4:05 p.m. today, the House Secretariat issued an order paper for an extraordinary sitting on Thursday, October 21, 2021 at 10:30 a.m. for the purpose of Section 36(1)(a) and (b) of the Constitution. This is the order paper. And on this order paper is placed the motion that the UNC MPs filed in the Parliament. And it is placed on the order paper, this order paper. But I saw recently, I think it was on Sunday, the 17th October 2021, former House Speaker Barry Sinanan said that the Speaker has his discretion to choose on the motion against the President. I have the greatest of respect for Mr. Barry Sinanan as a very distinguished attorney at law and a distinguished former House Speaker. However, with greatest of respect, I believe that he has erred in his interpretation of this matter. And on the basis of our standing orders, the Speaker has to put forward the motion for debate in the Parliament. And I tell you why now. The standing order 34 on page 22 of the standing order states as follows. We have to note that standing order 34 of our standing orders does not give the Speaker any discretion to dismiss a bill or motion filed by a member unless it's dealing with increasing taxes or withdrawing money from the consolidated fund. So Section 34, page 22 states, subject to the provisions of the Constitution and these standing orders, any member may introduce any bill or propose any motion for debate in the House, and the same shall be disposed of in accordance with the standing order. So that's the first standing order. Then, when a question is proposed and so on as per standing order 34, and according to section 35 of our Constitution, we have a motion that no way infringes with respect to increasing taxes or withdrawing monies from the consolidated fund. We move along. Our motion was filed in accordance with the Constitution, sections 35, 36. So we are in keeping with the Constitution on a motion and in keeping with the standing orders. Then we come now to Standing Order 40. Standing Order 40 deals with the admissibility of motions to the Parliament. And it says a motion must clearly indicate the issue to be raised for debate and include only such material as may be necessary to identify the facts or matter to which the motion relates. The Speaker shall be the sole judge of the admissibility of a motion which shall satisfy the following conditions. Yes, she's the sole judge of the admissibility, but it must satisfy these conditions, and once they do, then it must go forward. So our motion clearly identified the issue to be debated, that is the establishment of a tribunal to investigate the conduct and so on of the President. Secondly, we do not breach the earlier standing order about taxes and so on. And this 3440, Standing Order 40 says a motion shall raise substantially one definite issue. That's what we've done. It must not contain ironical, offensive expressions or words that would not be permitted in debate. It must not contain the names of persons unless they are strictly necessary to render the motion intelligible. It must not raise for debate matters of conduct of persons except in their public capacity. It shall not revive discussion of a matter that has been discussed in the same session. Shall not raise for debate a matter which already qualifies to be discussed. Shall not relate to matters which have been referred to a committee of the House for consideration report. And it should not exceed 250 words in length. We have complied with every single one of these conditions in the motion that we have filed. Upon review, the motion filed by the opposition satisfies each of these criteria stated within Standing Order 40 and must be deemed valid. Then we go to Standing Order 48.8. This acknowledges the fact that substantive motions can be brought against the President, and it states at page 30 of the Standing Orders 48.8. The conduct of the President or any other person performing the function of President, members of the Senate, the House or judges of the Supreme Court of Judicature, or other persons performing judicial functions shall not be raised except upon a substantive motion moved for the purpose. Ours is clearly a substantive motion brought pursuant to sections 35 and 36 of our Constitution. So I disagree with greatest of respect with Mr. Barry Sinaran. This is not in the discretion of the Speaker to withhold the motion being placed for debate in the House of Representatives. We look forward to that debate because we do believe that there must be transparency and accountability, and this is the only mechanism. This motion is the only mechanism to hold the President to account for her conduct. There is no other mechanism. The Rowley PNM can try to subvert, undermine, and abuse our sacred rights, our freedoms, and the doctrine of the separation of powers, which is a central pillar of our Constitution. But as long as they do that, there will always be the rising sun. They can try to operate in the darkness and shadows for however long, but as we have seen, what is in the dark always comes to light. They know the UNC is on their heels. Prime Minister Rowley knows it. A.G. Farris knows it. Minister of National Security Stewart knows it. Everyone knows it, and they are getting desperate. Just look at the behavior of the Prime Minister over the weekend. It was a total embarrassment to that lofty office. The Prime Minister also had a meltdown because he knows we are coming for him, politically and legally so. The UNC will continue to be that shield that stands in front of citizens when faced with a gangster government, dictatorial government like the Rowley PNM. We will continue to fight inside the Parliament, outside the Parliament, and wherever citizens are being taken advantage of, we will stand with you. I thank you, may God bless you, and may God bless Trinidad and Tobago.
42 billion on health in the last 6 years. And in this pandemic, more than 5 billion as indicated by the Minister of Finance. Yet today, Madam President, our country ranks in the worst 49th we have 49th in the world in terms of deaths per million population, 1,127 deaths per million population, according to Johns Hopkins University tally. Peru is the worst in the world. While Jamaica ranks better, far better than us, 70th with less deaths, 698 per 100,000. We are 1,127 deaths per million population. India stands at 86 with 330 per million population. Barbados and almost all other Caribbean countries are experiencing less COVID-19 deaths per million population. If I give you some statistics, in May we had 326 deaths, in June 352, in July 223, in August 222, in September 2021, 197 deaths. One death was occurring almost every 2 hours in this country, average about 10 deaths per day. And when questioned on issues relating to the handling of certain matters, the Minister of Health openly pronounces that his responsibility as minister stops at the door of the hospital. One can ask then if his actions are not tantamount to misconduct in public office. Who is running the Ministry of Health? Is not the minister? Why must his responsibility stop at the door of the hospital? You could imagine when I was Minister of Education, I would say that my responsibility stopped at the gate of the schools. I would be very, very callous and careless. So it is really, this country is on automatic pilot. The Ministry of Health is on automatic pilot. So with such gross irresponsibility, bewildering incompetence and serious mismanagement and hubris, and that type of behavior and attitude, I call for the immediate resignation of the Honorable Minister of Health or be fired. Some have been saying he is the worst Minister of Health this country has ever experienced since independence. He must resign. In Brazil, 3 Ministers of Health have been dismissed. United Kingdom, the minister resigned. Czechoslovakia, Scotland, Bahamas, Poland, Canada, Malaysia, India, their ministers of health, amongst many others, have resigned. We want the resignation of this present Minister of Health. South Africa, Zweli Mkhize, resigned to bring stability to the health department as he was about to be fired. Minister Dayal Singh must do the honorable thing. He must do the same, resign or be fired. There must continue to be morality and integrity in public office. Minister Dayal Singh has failed miserably to manage this COVID-19 pandemic. 1,600 deaths have occurred, and many thousands more who have lifelong disabilities subsequent to the COVID. The COVID-19 deaths of over 1,600 citizens rest squarely on the hands of the Minister of Health, the Honorable Prime Minister, and the seriously clinically inexperienced medical advisors. They must all go. We call for them to be removed and to resign on their own. The minister, you would remember the Minister of Health saying at one time, don't wear masks. Then he come back and he said, wear mask, take a merino and tear it up and wear your mask. And the medical doctor in the team saying that COVID is a little thing. And then the minister would come and say, COVID-19 is not a serious issue. His chief medical officer told the Joint Select Committee of Parliament that COVID-19 is not a serious issue. January 30th, 2020, I raised the motion of urgent public importance in the other place for debate, but was refused. We raised it 2 other times in the other place. That's 3 occasions. We tried to debate this COVID-19 in the Law House, and twice it was raised in this August chamber, and nothing was, we were refused to debate it. But in March 2020, the government claimed that it was ready to manage the pandemic, but they were in a disastrous state of ill preparedness, Mr. Deputy President, Mr. Vice President. They had insufficient personal protective equipment, masks and gowns, insufficient frontline doctors and nurses, when there were nearly 300 junior doctors, house officers begging for jobs, some working in service stations, hundreds of qualified nurses unemployed, actively seeking employment with reasonable contracts, not 1 month or 3 months, but contracts which can give them job security. No job security for the nurses. You can understand how they feel when they go out to save lives and they know that their jobs are not well taken care of. There was scarcity of ventilators. A few temporary ventilators were purchased, many of which are now damaged and still being used today. Although temporary 18 months ago, temporary now 18 months. So do you understand, Mr. Vice President, why patients continue to die in the ICU on a daily basis? There is shortage of appropriate pharmaceuticals and lab reagents, acute shortage of test kits, deliberate undertesting to suit the PNM political agenda, and hoodwinking the population for election purposes in August, giving the false impression that they had fantastic management of the pandemic, but with dangerous, misleading COVID-19 propaganda. CAFA alone was doing few tests. The tracing of contacts was grossly inadequate. The minister kept on promising that hospitals will commence testing shortly, but up to today, not one test is being done in public hospitals. He ominously refused the private ISO accredited and certified private labs from testing. But the government had the ulterior motive to win the election by false propaganda. Why is it that now the same labs have done over 160,000 COVID-19 tests by the same private labs which he refused? This, of course, comes to a cost to citizens. Over $250 million have been spent by citizens to pay for their own testing, whereas internationally, citizens could walk or drive in anywhere for free testing. And governments still refusing to allow the rapid antigen testing readily available in countries globally, which has a 95% specificity and sensitivity. It is an extremely reliable test, cheaper, faster, and very convenient to be used at home. But the government refuses this, to bring in the rapid antigen testing. This is the state of affairs in this country. The Minister of Health doesn't know what he is doing, and he is advised, and the Prime Minister is advised by a team of inexperienced young doctors who have no clinical experience. They just have a master in public health, and that is their claim to fame. When there are thousands of senior doctors who could help this country, who could help to prevent lives, but they are thrown under the bus. You remember the Minister of Health saying he can obtain 72 ventilators if required. Today we have 24 in total to be spread from Couva Hospital, Augustus Lung Hospital, Arima Hospital. Tobago only has 5. What a shame and disgrace. We have one of the worst in the world in terms of ICU units. And we still have temporary units after 18 months, Mr. Deputy Vice President. Ventilatory and ICU support in Trinidad and Tobago is one of the worst in the world. Is it surprising then that the government and the 4 public health doctors are refusing to provide information on the mortality in the intensive care units and high dependency units? They are running from that answer. I have asked that question publicly on 3 or 4 occasions. I spoke to the chief medical officer to provide that information, but the question is being repeatedly, but there's Tony silence, Mr. Vice President. No answers. They are deliberately hiding that important information from our citizens because they know that they will be shamed if they provide that information and make it public. That's why they're hiding it. I challenge the Chief Medical Officer today. I challenge the Minister of Health, publish the statistics of the mortality in the intensive care unit. We would find that possibly 10 out of 10 patients who go in the ICU come out dead at the end of it, whereas the rest of the world, 7 out of 10 patients in ICUs come out alive. You have junior doctors operating and intubating patients, junior doctors not understanding the oxygen saturation, the intake pressure, the outtake pressure. What is happening? Madam, Mr. Deputy, Mr. Vice President, this is absolutely and dangerously unacceptable when globally the ICUs have an average success rate of about 70%. So what is the mortality rate in our ICU? When families hear their loved ones in the ICU.
Deputy President. Standing Order 46.1, the degree of detail being examined might be better placed in another debate.
Senator Mark. Thank you. Honorable Senator, so continue along the line that you're going, but understand that you're going in to a number of examples along a point that will start to be repeated if it runs on for 40 minutes.
Yeah,
so continue in what you're doing, but just understand that you're talking about health, and then you're going into examples as to why certain things are the way they are, but it's coming into tedious repetition if you do that for 40 minutes straight.
I'm guided, Mr. Vice President. I'm elated to see my colleague, the Honorable Senator and Minister of Foreign Affairs, standing. It's nice to see you, Honorable Minister. We go a long way back. Mr. Vice President, the Honorable Opposition Leader has consistently called for a commission of inquiry into the management of the COVID-19 pandemic. Even up to last night, the Leader of the Opposition did so again. And you would have recently seen that the British government acceded to the call for such an inquiry. And that inquiry has been completed, and the findings will soon be made available to the rest of the world. And this is what we want for Trinidad and Tobago. This is how leaders operate in a democracy, not here as a dictatorship. And I continue to ask for a confidential inquiry into every COVID-19 related death. We have been brought up, the Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs knows that, and I know we have two other medical colleagues in this House, Senator Remy and Senator Dial Singh, if he's still here, who would know that in Britain there is a confidential inquiry into every maternal death occurring in Britain. But we have 1,600 deaths, Mr. Vice President. We must have a confidential inquiry. Confidential so we will know where we're going wrong. We are almost 20 months into this pandemic, and we still don't know what is happening. Hundreds of grieving families have unanswered questions surrounding the unfortunate deaths of their loved ones, sometimes unable to obtain any information of their families, and only to come to hear that the families have died in a mortuary somewhere, come to identify the body, only to discover at times the body is not there, with questions as to where it can be found. So we have underemployment of nurses, no contracts for nurses, no contracts for doctors, keeping the doctors gagged, victimization issues come into play, they can't talk. So where is the $5 billion spent on the COVID-19 pandemic? No answers. Imagine we had to receive 7 ventilators from the American Embassy to assist our failures in procurement. Could we not have bought more pulse oximeters at $40 each? We could have bought at 2,000, 10,000, 40 by 10,000, we work out that figure. An oxygen concentrator, which helps to save a life, is over 2,000 max. Ventilators at 200,000, we could have bought the 50 ventilators, which would be about 10 million. So they failed to purchase, and we're still using temporary ventilators to manage infected patients. At one time, Mr. Vice President, there were nearly 10,000 infected patients quarantining at home, thereby infecting family members, resulting in some deaths of families. No medical advice or clinical support was provided to those infected families. Imagine 10,000 quarantining at home while deaths were occurring from their households. At COVID-19 emergency tents, medical staff and doctors had to wait sometimes 7 days for the COVID test result of critically ill patients, and who could not have been transferred for more emergency care, dying while awaiting transfer. Many have died in their homes, in their ambulances and the emergency tents, unable to receive critical care management. And we all remember Prime Minister Rowley's invitation of Trinidad and Tobago citizens to Tobago at Easter, as the government fools the people, saying it is safe to go to Tobago. And as confirmed by the Ministry of Transport, more than 50,000 traveled to and from Tobago. In the 3 months subsequent to Easter, Trinidad and Tobago experienced over 900 COVID-19 deaths, over 1,320 in 5 months from May to September, and over 75 in Tobago, when prior to Easter, Tobago had less than 5 deaths. Thousands of elderly citizens were invited for vaccines, standing in crowded long lines in pouring rain to come and receive your vaccine, which was really unavailable in the first place. Some becoming COVID-19 infected and unfortunately dying shortly after. Senior citizens had to line up. We would remember that from the newspaper photographs and pages. Families have lost very dearly beloved mothers, fathers, subsequent, and I would say deceitful and considered willful endangerment of their sacred, cherished lives. And here we have the untouchable cultural artist, CEO at NCRAJ, Davlin Thomas, continues his high-handed, malicious, and spiteful tirade across the health sector. His incompetence has been condoned by the PNM's high office holders. Why? This CEO was transferred out of 6.
A point of order, please. 46.4. It's quite offensive.
Okay, members. Senator, so in terms of the strong inflammatory language, just temper it a bit. Continue.
Right, thank you, Madam, Mr. Vice President. Mr. Vice President, the CEO of the North Central Regional Health Authority transferred out 6 very senior, experienced consultant doctors, intensivists, anesthetists, pulmonologists, emergency and critical care doctors, nephrologists, all removed from Couva Hospital. So it is no mystery then that just after this, their deaths multiplied. And 12 senior doctors came to their help and asked questions about them, but they were then gently threatened with their jobs. So 18 senior doctors have been kept out of the mainstream provision of medical care, both at Couva and Eric Williams Medical Sciences Complex hospitals, while citizens were dying and no one being held accountable. Where are the drugs to save lives? Where are the antiviral drugs of remdesivir, the monoclonal antibodies, which one of the advisors couldn't pronounce? Tocilizumab, that is the name of the drug. Where's the drug from Regeneron with the antibodies in the plasma? There is no cost to a life, Mr. Vice President. Everything should be put out there to save a life. We as senior doctors, and my colleagues in this House know, if we lose a patient, that is most sacred to us. It is painful. And as I can recall, in my 40 years of private medical practice, I have never lost a patient on the operating theater table. Neither have I lost a patient at delivery. And that is God's work. So for us as senior doctors, our lives, patients' lives are very sacred to us. And we can't lose 1,600 people like that. You have to put out your best pharmaceuticals. I understand that the drug, the monoclonal antibody is not available in Trinidad. You have now coming into play an oral antiviral drug that has passed through phase 1 and phase 2 and waiting for phase 3 trial that may save the lives of all the world. And the vaccines might be put behind the shelf. So, Mr. Vice President, the Prime Minister, the Minister of Health and his advisory team must be held accountable for this blatant, pervasive issue of possibly spiked by the CEO at Couva and at Eric Williams. And this is very serious. Some people may say it is what may be called it criminal negligence. You hear every day, Mr. Vice President, a parallel health system. But you do not really have a parallel health system in this country. It is not efficient, it is not functioning properly. The government has failed to provide any research or empirical data and analysis in the health sector, particularly over the last 2 years, with comparison of non-COVID years to COVID-19 years. So what is happening in our parallel healthcare system? Thousands of minor and major surgical procedures have been postponed in our hospitals. Many cancer patients have died while awaiting surgery and chemotherapy treatments over the last 20 months. Many ischemic heart disease patients have died awaiting open heart bypass surgery. Many hernias have become strangulated with bowel complications. Patients are being given 2-year appointments for surgical procedures, 2 years to wait for surgery. During this waiting time, they die. Sometimes there is a waiting time of 6 months to a year for a diagnostic CT scan or MRI. Hundreds of patients with diabetes, hypertension, asthma, heart disease, kidney disease worsened and died from their uncontrolled and untreated medical complications. So what a national disgrace. And they keep talking about a parallel health system and a parallel health system. The parallel health system has gone through. There is no medical management there. So don't provide lip service to fool the people about a parallel health system. Where is your conscience? You know it has been an abysmal failure. Let me speak a bit about vaccine hesitancy. There has been and continuing an alarming absence of any carefully planned, appropriate education campaign on the necessity for taking vaccines. You just can't say vaccinate, vaccinate, vaccinate every day. You have to change the minds of the people. Dr. Carissa Etienne, Director of PAHO, recently emphasized this as urgent and absolutely necessary to counter the anti-vaxxers' trust. A carefully planned education campaign published in the Express newspapers, Mrs. Etienne, Dr. Etienne statement was published. So the Ministry of Health must assemble teams of expert consultant doctors, which we have hundreds of us in the country, and nurses at various media houses and designated public areas to answer direct questions and concerns from citizens who express reservations, apprehension, anxiety, and fear of accepting the vaccines. We need to bring them in, educate them. I can't think about any real contraindication to the administration of the vaccine, and I want to give the government the support in this way by saying to the people, go and get your vaccines, because there's really no absolute contraindication to the administration of the vaccine. I can't think of any. If you have a cancer, you are the most important person to go and get it. If you have any other disease, you should get it first, because you stand the risk of dying if you get the disease. But this sadly has not been contemplated, and I proffered it to the government for them to consider having massive education campaigns in public places particularly. Questions have been asked, Mr. Vice President, on the useless, unacceptable, unjustifiable, and unnecessary extended state of emergency and lockdowns, demonstrative of a dictatorship of an autocratic government, this state of emergency, restricting citizens from doing anything, being used to prevent expressions of dissent from the citizens, and for the unjust curtailment of one's freedom, movement, and freedom of association, while engendering joblessness, hunger, and sometimes starvation, and social and economic destruction. I call, Mr. Vice President, on citizens, all of you who are listening, to stand together and defend our constitutional rights and democracy. A time to change. PNM, Prime Minister Rowley's government, now widely accepted or acknowledged as incompetent, dictatorial, arrogant, autocratic, and certainly a failed government.
Senator,
today I asked
Senator, remember the ruling that I spoke to before in relation to inflammatory comments, so just again, once again, reminding, temper them as you move forward in your contribution.
Right. Mr. Vice President, may I be reminded how much time I have again? 2:05.
That's right.
Right. So, Mr. Vice President and members of this august House, I heard the Minister speak about maternal mortality and neonatal mortality and so on. Ratched up figures made to suit untrue statistical information, because the Central Statistical Office has no information on that. When I asked the lead member of the CSO, he said, Dr. Gopi Singh, I cannot give you any information because we do not have it at the moment. So where is the minister getting his information? And he's even confusing whether it's maternal mortality ratio or maternal mortality rate. And I wouldn't have time to explain the difference. But the Honorable Minister of Health obviously remains confused as to the difference between maternal mortality rate and maternal mortality ratio. And then he speaks about screening tests. And yet again, he's again providing unscientific, unresearched statistics. So I want to advise the Minister, please don't continue to fool the population with gross untruths and unscientific statements. Respect people's knowledge. Don't exaggerate untruths. You must have the integrity in the conduct of your service to the people. So there is a lot of information on the statistics in relation to Trinidad in terms of...
Senator, there's a point of order.
42.6. How could he say that he should have integrity in his... Mr. Vice President?
Say again, I didn't hear you, Minister.
46.6, 46.6, Mr. Vice President. He just said that the Minister of Health should have integrity in his affairs and something like that.
So Senator, like I said, in the other rulings before, the imputation of improper motives and the inflammatory comments.
I'm moving on, yeah. I know he has a deliberate...
Members, please. You're talking over me whilst I'm ruling, and the Senator is trying to hear what I have to say. Continue, Senator.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vice President. Mr. Vice President, these are neophytes in the thing, you know. They're neophytes. I've had 21 years experience in this business. And you understand, they must jump up and try to say something to waste your time. Mr. Vice President, there have been lots of promises by this government on health. They said Couva Hospital, they will establish a public-private partnership in 2016. They're waiting on the Welsh report in 2016. No public health private sector partnership. They said they will open an offshore medical school for the last 6 years, since 2015 manifesto. No offshore medical school. But near all Caribbean countries, Grenada, Antigua, Barbados have established these offshore medical schools. My colleagues in the House will know that. But they have been talking about it for 6 years. They're promising a national health insurance system since 2020, repeated every 5 years at election time. So, Mr. Vice President, I can speak about the 6 years of PNM's destruction of the health sector, suffering and death of thousands of citizens, horrible overcrowding at accident and emergency departments of the hospital, unacceptable waiting times for surgery, insufficient medical resources, non-functioning diagnostic equipment, unavailable reagents for lab testing, and so on. Sudden closure of the central block at Port of Spain Hospital, rendering little or no care for the people in North and West Trinidad. They maliciously terminated the construction of the National Oncology Center, putting an end to years of professional expertise and recommendations for a one-site center for the management of the near 3,000 cancer patients annually. Scarcity and lack of basic pharmaceuticals and CDAP drugs at hospitals and health centers. Shortage and lack of anti-cancer chemotherapy drugs causing worsening of cancers in patients needing treatment in a timely manner. No lab testing facilities at the public hospitals for suspected heart patients. Over 18 babies died at the neonatal unit in 2018, deliberately refusing to act on recommendations to improve the health system as laid out in the 3rd and 4th Joint Select Committee reports of 2016 and 2017 in this Parliament. Non-implementation of recommendations of the Welsh report, and so on. 1,300 qualified nurses remain unemployed. More than 400 doctors remained on the breadline for months and months. Our hospitals became killing fields. Citizens admitted with curable illnesses ending up dead due to lack of medical and nursing personnel and equipment. So there's a lot more. You remember the Zika infection recently with microcephalic babies infected, and these babies are now suffering. The parents are suffering, and so on. Breakdown in the mortuary refrigeration at San Fernando Hospital. So, Mr. Vice President, I brought these issues and critical analyses of the performance of the Ministry of Health, the Minister of Health, his COVID advisory team, They have failed the citizens of this country. They must all resign or be fired immediately. I have a few minutes left, Mr.
Senator, you have 5 more minutes.
5 more minutes. Mr. Deputy Speaker, Mr. Deputy Vice President, since March 2020, near 2 academic years or 6 educational terms have gone, with no face-to-face education of our near 250,000 students. Thousands of students lost 2 academic years in their educational pursuits. March 20 to June 20, September 2020 to June 2021, one full academic year, September 21 to present another term. So even after the first 12 months since COVID-19 pandemic, over 70,000 students had no IT devices to receive online learning from their teachers on various platforms, and thousands more were without Wi-Fi connectivity. So near 100,000 students or greater were unacceptably deprived from their constitutionally enshrined quality and equitable education. Even 1 year after the pandemic began, today, still 40,000 students are without devices and without Wi-Fi connectivity to thousands more. Their 18 months Wi-Fi connectivity numbers are still unknown about several thousands of our students. Mr. Vice President, after 18 months in this pandemic, this disgraceful state of incompetence and incapacity of governance, and yet this is a new Minister of Education. We have to give her time to settle down, but it's 14 months now. But her predecessors, the 2 previous Ministers of Education, destroyed the entire education sector. They swiftly reversed all the significant gains we made in IT and so many other areas in their 5 years of governance. We have enough primary school teachers, 485, secondary school principals, secondary school teachers. They could have provided this information in 2 weeks about how many students are without Wi-Fi and how many students are without devices. It took this government more than 1 year, and they still don't know how many students are without. That's a disgrace, Mr. Vice President. And imagine the government begging the corporate bodies for IT devices. And we saved $220 million per year from the school feeding program. We saved $30 million per year from school transport. So in 2 years, you saved $500 million. You couldn't buy 70,000 laptops or IT devices for students. That is a lack of governance capacity and capability, Mr. Deputy Speaker, Mr. Vice President. Could you imagine how successful we would have been today if Prime Minister Rowley had continued our successful IT programs? But no, as soon as Prime Minister Rowley came into office in September 2015, his government destroyed the IT education program and laptop program. 2 generations of students have suffered as a result. Education destruction and precipitous reversal of all the significant educational gains we made in 2010. And we are now speaking about free Wi-Fi for schools and so on. We had that. We had some schools with 100 megabits per second. So the scholarships went down from 450 to 50. Meritocracy destroyed. Bursaries for P&M supporters. They destroyed the Tech Fork education system. They destroyed the Caribbean vocational qualifications 1 and 2. Political interference in learning institutions of UTT, and several lecturers dismissed. School construction has been a mess. 3 schools constructed in 6 years, Mr. Vice President. The performance in primary schools has been abysmal. 17% of patients getting of students getting less than 30%. 17%.
Mr. Vice President, 46.1, please. This has nothing to do with the appropriation bill.
Continue,
We're talking about the past.
Okay, members. Senator, continue.
Mr. Vice President, in conclusion, as I close, I wish to remind the population that this war against our nation and people by this government can only be won, and our democracy and economic and social stability can only be rebuilt and restored if every single citizen stands up and fights for it. The opposition leader and our members fight tirelessly every day against the galloping dictatorship that is engulfing our nation. But it is not just the UNC fight. Mr. Vice President, we have remained too quiet for far too long. It is inexcusable that now in our nation's most desperate time of need, when our democracy, economic standing, and social stability are tethering on the brink of collapse, our country's key groups in all sectors have gone quiet and remained so for too long. Why is this so? Is it that the members of these organizations are terrified of this government's ongoing punitive, destructive, and vengeful tendencies? Are they afraid that if they speak out, the government will seek to humiliate, slander, and destroy them, as it is its hallmark? Why are you silent? How much more are the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago willing to take? Do your duty
Senator,
and stand up for your country.
Senator,
do as I do today,
Senator,
and come back into the battle.
Senator Gopi Singh, sorry. Time.